Busy offseason so far for the Dodgers. I guess my first question to you is, last week they signed Blake Snell, they get Tommy Edman, or they re-signed Tommy Edman. Um, what was your expectations coming into this offseason? Because they just won a World Series. If the Dodgers decided we're not going to do anything, we're just going to bring back the guys that we have, you can't really make an argument towards them. It's like, okay, they got a lot of great pitchers coming back next year. Shohei's obviously going to be a part of the mix, and they have a really, really good team. Are you surprised at all that, yeah, we don't care? It doesn't matter that they just won a World Series, that they're still being ultra aggressive and landed, one of the top pitching free agents in all of Major League Baseball last week?
I'm a little surprised from the standpoint of, they've signed Blake Snell, and by most accounts, all accounts, they at least to still be somewhat involved in the Juan Soto sweepstakes. I didn't necessarily, and I know we'll probably get into Juan Soto here shortly, so I don't want to completely jump ahead. I don't necessarily see them signing Soto, but the fact that they're still in it at this late of this, this late in the game with him does surprise me. From a starting pitcher standpoint, not really. Yes, on paper, the Dodgers have 7 pitchers coming back next season. What I was raising concerns with as free agency started was, hey, yes, you have, Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, Emmett Sheehan, I don't think necessarily, but you do have guys coming back. Clayton Kershaw,
sure,
Shohei Ohtani. All of those guys are coming back from injuries, though. And
Glasnow as well.
Glasnow, yes. I was looking at that saying, okay, the depth is there on paper, but in reality, we've seen it 2-3 years in a row where the Dodgers get to October and they're looking around because they don't have enough starters. So to me, finding a starting pitcher this offseason and not just, re-signing Jack Flaherty and or Walker Buehler, who I think could be valuable additions to the team. Like, you needed to go get basically one of the aces that was out there. Like Snell, Corbin Burns, Max Fried a little bit to his name, but also he has some injury concerns. Of course, Roki Sasaki is a possibility as well. The potential is certainly there, but the reality is the Dodgers don't necessarily. I mean, there's a lot of speculation that he's going to be signing with the Dodgers, but it's not a done deal, at least publicly. 1 and 2, you never necessarily know how much time these guys might need to adjust to Major League Baseball. Yoshinobu Yamamoto did it relatively seamlessly. I know he struggled against your Padres out in the Seoul series and in ensuing starts against them, but for the most part, he had a great year.
Yeah, great in the postseason. Those big games, he was great. Yep.
So, so I wasn't surprised necessarily to see them go get a starting pitcher. The only question for me at that point was, were they really going to spend? Because we've seen Andrew Friedman, Ohtani was sort of the outlier, but he doesn't really do the bidding wars. And Snell's market doesn't necessarily seem to have been that. There were, interest from other teams. The Yankees were one of them. I think the Orioles may have been tied to Snell at some point. So he did have a little bit of a market. And so, but to see the Dodgers kind of jump out ahead, like that did surprise me.
Yeah, you could clearly tell that's who they identified. And it was like, well, let's just get a deal done. And if it's coming down to money, and I know the Dodgers are still, they're very responsible with their money, but I think this last year has been a little interesting because it feels like to me they've come a little bit out of their comfort zone. What I mean by that is Glasnow's season played out exactly how it has his career. He's really good. He also wasn't available in the postseason. He had injuries, right? But they still committed 5 years and $135 million. Blake Snell, I think, is a stud. I got a chance to watch him when he was in San Diego. Obviously, you saw last year with the Giants, the way the year started and the way the year ended. But they're adding so much there that I'm sure part of the strategy is we don't need guys to pitch 200 innings in a season. And if they're going to go with a 6-man rotation, it's almost as if the strategy is kind of changing with the Dodgers as they get pressure off their shoulders because they won a World Series and as they just have mountains of money that they're going to go try to, obviously take advantage of it. And kudos to them for saying, yeah, we got money and we're going to go spend it as well. I'm curious on this. You mentioned Juan Soto, and I'm with you. I don't think anybody has really thought that Juan Soto is going to be a Dodger, but they did meet with him, and it sounded like he did get an offer. What would have to happen, you think, for Juan Soto to be a Dodger? Can you kind of play out what you think that maybe it's other teams didn't do this? Like, what is the pitch you think from the Dodgers that can get a Scott Boras, representation player, a 26-year-old absolute superstar in Juan Soto? What would be the path that we could be sitting here in the next, let's say, week or so, or maybe even sooner than that, and say Juan Soto signed with the Dodgers? What would have to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, the Dodgers can lead with there's certainly no guarantees in baseball, in any sport, in baseball especially. We haven't seen a repeat champion since the Yankees from 98 to 2000. But the Dodgers can certainly sit there and say, we are your best chance to win a World Series in 2025. This is the team we have. We just added Blake Snell. This is who's coming back. We would be adding you. They would be clearly the heavy favorites, right? So that, I think you lead with that. But I think for him to end up with the Dodgers, the money would have to be pretty much their contract offer would need to be pretty similar to other teams. I don't think they could come in at, I know the number being reported yesterday was 600 plus million. I saw something today, I believe it was Jeff Passan said it could get up to 15 years and 750 million. If the Dodgers, if the Dodgers stick around, 600, 620, and I'm using arbitrary numbers here,
sure,
600, 625, and Juan Soto does have, 700 million on the table from the Mets or the Yankees, I don't think that that's going to be, I don't think them saying, hey, we can win will be enough to overcome that. So I think it would need to be their contract offer is very similar to just whatever is out there from other teams. And then the leg up that the Dodgers could have on the other finalists, if you will, is that they're in the strongest position to win a World Series 2025, maybe even 2026, and then hopefully, building beyond that.
Yeah, it's funny when you lay it out that way, and I kind of have said this to myself from the beginning. I'm like, they're not going to go sign Soto. They're not spending 600 plus. The guy's going to be a DH in 4 or 5 years. Like I do all of that. I play that out. But they're still in the mix. They're still in the running. And this could just be as simple as the Dodgers. It's good to have their names around all these big time players. They will make a respectable offer, but they're not, maybe it's shorter years, but a little bit more money per year, whatever the case is. Like they're going to have their own strategy, but it just seems like at the end of the day, there are too many other teams desperate to have Juan Soto, where the Dodgers are not desperate for anything. With that in mind, once Soto does sign, and let's just say it's not with the Dodgers, how soon or how quick do you think Teoscar Hernandez makes a decision?
I think probably within a couple of days. I mean, I know, our good friend David Vassay, who's plugged in with the team, he reported yesterday that the Dodgers and Teoscar Hernandez are already working on a deal. And it seemed like they're pretty deep into negotiations, and it's probably just a matter of waiting. This isn't Vassay, this is me speculating. It's probably just a matter of waiting to see what happens with Juan Soto. And once that does, then the Dodgers will pivot and, dot some I's and cross some T's. But I would expect that to happen pretty quickly. And it makes sense. I think that you mentioned it at kind of when I first hopped on, like there is a little bit of a balance of if the Dodgers had said, hey, we're just going to re-sign our guys that helped us win a World Series this year, like there wouldn't be a huge argument, right? Like it was successful. You have some players coming back that we just mentioned from injury, this and that. I think, though, that there is, and we've seen it in the NBA and other sports, like teams typically do try to infuse a little bit of new blood, right? Get somebody in there who wasn't maybe going to grow complacent. Not that I'm overly concerned with the Dodgers in that regard, but at this point, you have Blake Snell, and he very clearly wants to win. He is, introductory press conference at the stadium the other day. I was there. Came across as, very competitive person, somebody who, he's determined to win a World Series. He's a two-time Cy Young Award winner, has gotten to the playoffs, hasn't gotten over the hump yet. Like he seems really motivated to do that. So with Snell in the fold, I think if the Dodgers were to now go the route of, okay, we're going to re-sign Teoscar Hernandez, we're going to re-sign Kike Hernandez, we're going to re-sign Blake Trinan, I think that would be good enough. And even with all that, they might do a little bit of tinkering on the margins of get, an under the radar starting pitcher or relief pitcher that Andrew Friedman is typically so strong at finding.
Matt, I think I'm going to try to set this up as best as I can. Clearly the Dodgers it's not like they just got good 2 years ago. They've been really good since the Guggenheim Group took over. They've been very competitive. They're winning NL West titles like it's nothing. It doesn't mean anything to them. What is that? 12 out of 13 or 13 out of 14, whatever it is. They're every year they're in the playoffs, and That's kind of the only thing I think you can do in baseball. You can guarantee yourself a playoff spot.